What's up, and welcome to another episode of the Grindline Podcast. You're listening to episode 277. I'm your host, Greg. I am here tonight with Tyler. We have a little bit of a show. News in Red Wings land is like absolutely dead. There is nothing going on. Tyler, it's good to see you've recovered from your ailments from last week. How you doing?
Feeling good. I've been super busy the last couple weeks or so with some work stuff, but thankfully things are trending in the right direction. Once I pass my exam on Tuesday, I should be good to go for the foreseeable future. So, other than maybe a vacation or two in the summertime. Actually, I do have one bachelor party to go to in Austin, so that should be fun. Enjoying the playoffs. Actually, none of the teams that I really hate are in it at this point. So like I this is like I'm kind of like happy regardless of what happens. I mean, I'd like to see Edmonton win the Stanley Cup just because of McDavid. But then again, there's a part of me that's like, fuck Ken Holland. So like at the same time, I'm like, yeah, I guess I'd rather see Dallas because Jim Nill could have still been around had he not taken all the scouts, had Ken Holland, given him the general manager position way back when. But whatever, it is what it is. We have Steve Eisenman, and we're going to talk a little bit about what the future looks like and how we can improve this team.
My no dog in the fight team is probably the New York Rangers. I will flip shit if the Dallas Stars win and Jamie Benn gets to touch the Stanley Cup. It absolutely not. Absolutely not. I think for as much of a dirtbag as he is and how he hurt Larkin and then it's basically like it's a hockey play. Like, get out of here. Like no. The Dallas Stars cannot win. I think the least damaging is probably the New York Rangers.
Yeah, not the case here where I live. People fucking hate New York teams, so I don't really mind. Like I hate the Yankees, obviously being a Red Sox fan, but like I feel like Rangers fans are different. Like I have a lot of respect for Rangers fans for the most part, and it's an original six team, and they haven't won since '94. And everything that happened in '94 seems to continue to happen in 2024 now. So I don't know if you saw like the list of things that have happened since '94 or that happened in
Don't
'94 that are
don't
now
even do this
happening.
to me. Every time
Uh,
those lists and shit come out, I feel so old. Like I'm 34 and then they're like, like those kids are like graduated from high school like 10 years ago and I'm like, "Stop."
but like I I guess at the end of the day, like there's no Chicago, there's no Montreal, there's no Toronto. Regardless of who wins at this point, as long as we get a couple of 7-game series and maybe a final with 7-game series, as much as hockey as I want. I mean, I don't know about you. I haven't tuned into a whole lot of baseball this year. The Red Sox have kind of made me check out a little bit. I've watched other stuff, but as far as like me consuming sports, it's been college football content and then like the Stanley Cup playoffs. I've watched pretty much every game that I've been able to watch. So can't get enough of it. Hopefully we get a lot more of it still in the conference finals, and I'm looking forward to seeing what happens. But
Yeah,
anyways,
speaking of playoffs, the Grand Rapids Griffins, I guess this is where we'll start, were eliminated from the AHL playoffs. Sebastian Cossa ended 9 playoff games with a 2.72 goals against and a 900 save percentage. 5 wins, 4 losses. I'd say that's pretty good. I mean, that's a good goals against average. The save percentage is not spectacular. That just means, though, that he saw a ton of shots. Like, there were a ton of shots fired at Sebastian Cossa. And all in all, from the people that I talked to that heavily watch the Griffins, all playoffs, he was solid. Looked like you wanted a playoff goaltender to look down the stretch. And that's really exciting knowing that going into next season, hoping, and we'll talk about this a little later too, hoping they do something at the goaltending position, that you've got a guy where if a goalie goes down and you're not carrying three, that he's one that could come up and possibly get some backup games next season, and you don't really have to worry about him maybe going out there. You don't have to say, "Oh God, here comes Kosa. We're ready for a blowout loss." I think you take that going forward and get some confidence in the performance as a whole. In the regular season, 40 games played, a 2.41 goals against and a 3.19 save percentage, 22 wins, 9 losses, 9 overtime losses. And I think you just say, go for it.
Yeah, I agree 100%. The goalie position is obviously something that it continues to evolve at the NHL level, but also in the development. It seems like the goalies are developing a little bit quicker than they used to. Um, if you would have told me Kosa would be pushing for an NHL job next year, I would have told you you're crazy 2 years ago because he started in Toledo. I thought, he'd need a couple more years in Grand Rapids, or at least 2 years in Grand Rapids, year and a half in Grand Rapids. But he's it's coming. I mean, but the only thing is like Lyon's still there. Do you make a trade for a goalie? Like what do you do? Do you believe in Kosa that much? You have Trey Augustine coming as well. So like there's definitely some depth at the goalie position for the Red Wings. That I would say is a pretty pretty big strength for them at this point. And but obviously goalies take some time. But I looked at a goalie prospect list, and they already have Augustine ahead of Kosa.
Yeah, I think McKean's not McKean's. There are some people that had Augustine ahead of Kosa. I'm not sure that I can agree with it because when you look at it, Kosa's played at a higher level. Granted, the NCAA is like it's hard hockey. That's
Yeah,
probably right underneath the AHL. But I think Kosa has been through more pro and semi-pro than Augustine. I wouldn't be comfortable putting Augustine above Kosa until, say, he went to. I'm guessing he'll go back to state, but say he went to Toledo and just went there and won the cup and just like was lights out, and then came to Grand, like followed the same path. Unless they plan on shoving Augustine right to Grand Rapids, which I don't think they'll do. I'm
I
not
don't
sure
think
how
he'll be
you
in
could.
Toledo. I think he'll be at Michigan State before he's at Toledo.
Probably, but I'm not sure how you could rank him above Kosa simply because Kosa's played more and has looked just as solid a lot of the time. Maybe it's because of the slow start, but I can't really put that against him.
I think it's just based on the upside. I think that they people look at Costa and say, "Well, he probably should be in the NHL by now." And I know that's unfair. Like everybody develops at a different pace, but I feel like a lot of the people that don't watch the team closely, that don't pay attention to the Red Wings to the level that we all do, or anybody does at a professional level, doesn't really understand that Costa, you know, probably could have played one more year of junior if he wanted to, and then came to Grand Rapids. But then they said, you know what? No, turn pro. You're gonna play in Toledo. You're gonna take your lumps there. You're gonna play pretty good there, and then get called up to Grand Rapids and play there. But he still hasn't played in the NHL, and I think a couple of the goalies already have played in the NHL that have were drafted above him. Right? Has the kid? Oh, why can't I think of his name right now? Um,
Talking about Jesper Wallstedt.
Yeah, Wallstedt. Has he played a game in the NHL yet?
Jesper Wallstedt played 3 games for the Minnesota Wild, had a 301 goals against and an 897 save percentage.
Yeah, so that's not that's probably what Kosa would do if he came to the NHL. I don't see him getting lit up. He's obviously a big enough guy. I think a lot of the people say that Trey Augustine is a lot more technical and is a lot more
It's a lot
like
calmer.
polished when it yeah, polished, but also like technical and square to the puck, and like I feel like the NCAA helps groom that a little bit because then, the NCAA, he plays at Michigan State, obviously the Big Ten, one of the better conferences in college hockey. You have some really good teams in that conference, and he faces a lot of good players. I mean, let's face it, there's some of the better players in the country in the Big Ten. So, um, I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting debate. I think that the fact that we're having this debate is a good thing because it doesn't just mean that we have Kosa and nobody else coming. We have Trey Augustine that is on the way at some point, So that's the way I look at it. It's probably a champagne problem to have at this point, but is Kosa ready to take that next step to be the backup goalie in Detroit? I don't know that yet.
Yeah, I think another one we need to talk about based on Grand Rapids playoffs, and I talked about it again a little bit last week when I did the mailbag, is Jonathan Berggren and how he kind of just exploded for the Griffins in the playoffs, was able to take games over. And then we get in these I get in these long-winded conversations with people on Twitter about Well, he absolutely needs to be on the Red Wings roster next season. And by contract standards, yes, if he is not on the Red Wings roster next season, then he has to be waived and then someone's going to pick him up. He's not a guy that's going to pass through waivers. So the decision is to keep him and see if this summer he can just heavily work on his defensive deficiencies to where his offense makes up for it, or package him and trade him to try and get what you think you need, which is a top four defenseman or a top six forward or a move up in the draft, possibly. Or use him to get maybe a goalie and ship one of your goalies out with him to upgrade. So looking at it, and I've tried looking at it from every angle. Is he right now safe enough to consistently play in the top six? No. Is he the skill set of a guy that you need to play in the bottom six? Not really, because those guys are your heavier skating guys. Those are your go to the corner and dig pucks out kind of dudes, your checking roles, your grinder roles in your bottom six, and also have to be defensively responsible. So when I look at it, the more I look at it, and with the word that he had contract disagreements this past season, I feel like it's more likely that he is traded than he is kept because of the guys you have coming up that play maybe similar style games or can play to that level, provide offense, but are maybe more defensively sound, that you could use him for a team that's maybe starved of a little bit of offense and get something back for him. The more I think about it and the more I look at the situation the Red Wings are at in general, the more I just can't see Berggren keeping a spot in the lineup like that with how much you need to improve next year to make the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that honestly, at the end of the day, like I don't see where he fits in the puzzle. I just don't see where he fits in the puzzle. I mean, in theory, you let maybe David Perron go and you slot in Berggren, but he needs to earn that. And there isn't
But
really much
they
that
also
I've
don't play the same kind of game.
you're right, they don't play the same kind of game, you know, but Perron's more in your face and in on the forecheck and you know, gets in the dirty areas, and I feel like Bergeron is more of a finesse kind of player, but he's also not even really that great at that. Like, it's just a weird dynamic. I don't want to call him a bust because I still think there's some potential there, but I think that the best way to do it would be to move on and trade him away. Um, you're not going to get a whole lot for him, but like you put him in a package and maybe you do get something that you would like, you know? So, I mean, that's the way I look at it. I just don't see it with him. Even when he comes up to the NHL, I know the first year he came up, he was pretty good, which was not this past year, but the year before, 2020, 2022, 23. But you know, that's been a year ago now, and if he was good enough to make the team, he would have played on the team this year, a significant amount of time, which he didn't. So, I just don't see where he fits with the Canes, with the DeBrincats. Obviously, we'll see if they bring Kane back, but, you know, just play the game for a second. He's a smaller guy. He doesn't get to the dirty areas. The Wings need to be a harder team to play against. Jonathan Bergeron doesn't make you a harder team to play against.
The guy that I think I would bring in ahead of Berggren, just with development so far and where you can play him in the lineup and how he played in the playoffs, in 9 playoff games, had 8 points, is Carter Mazur. Carter Mazur is a guy who can play in that bottom six and still develop, who plays that rough, in your face checking style game. I would replace a David Perron with a Carter Mazur. I think he has that offensive upside. I think he has that tenacity to his game, though he has knees of a younger man that David Perron does not have. He's got the speed. He can get in on the forecheck. He can back check very well. I think he has top six upside, but you could develop him in a bottom six role and he would fit in just fine. And I think that's a guy where if you say, I need to take a chance on someone, I need to them to be responsible and play more than one facet of the game. Right now, I'm putting Mazur ahead. Even though if Berggren this season in 67 games in Detroit, or last season in 67 games in Detroit, had 15 goals and 13 assists for 28 points. This season only played 12 games in Detroit and had 6 points. I think you could get maybe close to a half a point a game out of someone like a Mazur playing him with Michael Rasmussen and Andrew Kopp, or playing him on the bottom line, playing him with a Robbie Fabry and a Joe Veleno. I think you could get more out of a Mazur in that bottom six role than you could out of a Berggren.
Yeah, I honestly think too, if Perron wanted to sign a short term 1-year deal and play on the fourth line, and you bump Mazur up to the third line, then you're talking. That's 2 pains in the asses to play against. Mazur's a pain in the ass to play against. Perron's a pain in the ass to play against. Look at the teams that are left in the playoffs right now. I know we don't like Jamie Benn, but he's a pain in the ass to play against. They have some really good players on that Dallas team. The Edmonton Oilers have a couple pain in the ass players to play against. Zach Hyman, obviously McDavid and Draisaitl, but that's because of skill. Corey Perry, right? Look at the East. The Rangers have Rempe. They like hardly ever lose with him in the lineup, right? They have Barclay Goodrow. Like these, like as much as people say that grit and toughness doesn't matter, it does at this time of year. And it's starting to matter more and more because teams are realizing, oh my God, our star players are going to get pushed around if we don't have. You don't need fighters, but you need guys that aren't afraid to take to help a teammate out and step in if they need to. Not necessarily even fighting. Take a number, get them the next time. The Wings don't have enough players like that. Dylan Larkin took a couple of hits this year and players just stood around. Like, you need someone to stand up. Dylan Larkin doesn't have to be standing up for himself. So I guess my point is, at the end of the day, like these teams, I feel like are getting tougher to play against, and the Red Wings are still kind of a soft team. And I think I'm not saying you got to bring in a bruiser, but bring up Mazur, re-sign Perron maybe, or go to the open market and see what else is out there in terms of tough players. But obviously you don't want players that are just going to go out there and fight and take penalties and stuff like that. So it's got to be a balance, I feel like. And I feel like a lot of the teams in the playoffs have done a really good job of towing the line of instead of going over the line. Another player on the Rangers is Trouba. The Wings don't have a defenseman like that that's mean. I mean, I guess Seider, but he's still a little young to be playing that kind of game.
I think Edvinsson could get that way too.
Edvinsson
has shown that he can get in people's faces and he's not afraid to mix it up either. I think that's what I'm the least worried about. I'm not worried about our rookie defenseman or what we have coming there, because I think that like we've said over and over and over again, and so is everyone else, that's our strongest point. Our strongest point is our defensive pipeline and our goaltending pipeline. That's right there. Our weakest section is our forward pipeline, which if I was going into this draft, I'm like, okay, listen, we're taking this draft is forwards. We'll probably take a goalie because you take a goalie in every draft just for whatever's sake. But I think you go into this as a very forward heavy, I think, draft to begin with, that you go in and you draft a lot of forwards. But what I think we're going to talk about, we're going to take a little break. We have an actually ad read this week. So we got an ad read this week. We'll come back afterward from DraftKings to talk about who we would see on the trade market from other teams. The fourth period put out an article highlighting some people. So we'll get to that as soon as we are back from break. Just give us 1 second for word from DraftKings. We're this close to crowning the Stanley Cup champion, and with the action heating up on the ice, it's even hotter at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL. New to DraftKings? Listen up. New customers can get a no-sweat bet up to $1,500. Just deposit at least $5 and you'll get a bonus bet back equal to your first bet if it doesn't hit. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to get a no-sweat bet up to $1,500 if your first bet doesn't hit. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or in West Virginia, www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPENY or text HOPENY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas. 21 plus, age varies by jurisdiction, void in Ontario. one no sweat bet per new customer issued as one bonus bet based on amount of initial losing bet. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. See dkng.co/ice for eligibility, wagering, and deposit restrictions, terms, and responsible gaming resources. Copyright NHL 2024, all rights reserved. And we're back. And we are going to talk about some trade targets. So the fourth period, Dave Pagnotta over at the fourth, actually it was Frank Seravalli over at the fourth period, put out an article today called Trade Targets Decision Time Looms for Maple Leafs and Mitch Marner. Of course, that is who everyone is going to highlight because, again, the Leafs have no money and they have 4 overpaid people and now they need to get rid of one. And Mitch Marner
3
has become,
overpaid people.
I don't know, Nylander I think is probably still slightly overpaid.
No, that's why I said 3 because a lot of people will say Matthews, but I don't believe that.
Okay.
The 69 goal season.
Nice. Well, Marner is going to be the topic of discussion because he has become the scapegoat for Toronto. And if there's someone that needs to be moved, I guess they're going to pick him. But what we're going to start at is the goalies. There are 3 goalies mentioned. And honestly, any of the 3 would be a great fit to pick up in Detroit because they are all on, I think, 1 year. They all have 1 year. No, one has 2 years remaining on his contract, but the other 2 have 1 year remaining. They're all guys who could play with Alex Lyon in either a 1A, 1B, or you could start them and give Alex Lyon 30 starts, and it would be beautiful. You would have consistent goaltending every night, and it'd be fantastic. So the 3 goalies mentioned are Linus Ullmark, Jacob Markstrom, and UC Saros. Linus Ullmark had 40 games played with a 2.58 goals against and a 9.15 save percentage. He is 30 years old. Jacob Markstrom is 34 and in 48 games played had a 2.78 goals against and a 9.05 save percentage. And UC Saros is 29 in 64 games played this season, had a 2.86 goals against and a 9.06 save percentage. So your most worked goalie out of that is Saros. 64 games is a ton. But Saros has a season remaining at $5 million. Markstrom has 2 seasons remaining at $6 million. And Ullmark has 1 season remaining at $5 million. If I had to pick, and I think the way I'm going to do it is if you had to pick, who would you pick and why? And I think out of the 3 right now, and I mentioned it last week, is that I'm leaning Jacob Markstrom. And the reason that I'm leaning Markstrom is because I think that would be the goalie you would have to give up the least amount of assets to obtain. You might have to give up a 2nd round pick and a prospect to get him, or a 3rd round pick and a prospect. Where I think Boston getting rid of Ullmark because he has a season remaining, they're probably gonna their base ask is probably gonna be a 1st for how good he is as a player. Saros, I could see you get them getting maybe a 2nd and a roster player and a prospect, or like a high level prospect. But I think if you look at it, Markstrom, sure, he's older, but he's still solid. Played really well last season. And I think he would just cost the lowest amount of assets to obtain. So maybe you trade a Berggren and a pick and you can get a Markstrom. As to where I think you would have to give up something more substantial to get Ullmark or Saros.
Yeah, I don't want to trade with the Boston Bruins. I don't like trading within the division.
Is it?
I
It's because
don't-
of your hatred. That's why.
Well, yeah, but like you're trying to catch them. You're not trying to help them out. Like
We're in 2 completely separate parts of our team structure, though, right? They're technically on the downward because of their aging vets, the guys who retired, even though they keep doing what they just did. As to where we're on the
losing in the
upswing.
2nd round or the 1st round?
No, I mean like outplaying people's expectations. They're still playing a very high level of hockey, though they technically probably shouldn't be. And I get not wanting to trade with them, but I think trading with them at the position that each team is at currently is not really going to be that disastrous, I guess.
I mean, I guess we did make a trade with them about a year ago at the trade deadline, trading Bertuzzi to Boston for what was it, a 1st round pick, right?
Yeah, and he played really well in Boston.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess gun to my head, I say Saros because I think Saros is the best goalie out of the group. The youngest slightly. Um, Saros is obviously one of the better goalies in the NHL. I would say he's in the top 10, right? Or maybe even the top 5, depending on what you say.
He's at
Um,
least in the top half, right?
yeah,
Like,
exactly. So that's my point. Like, I feel like the teams that win Stanley Cups, you don't need an elite goalie, but you do need a good goalie. And also, if you look at the playoffs this year, you have elite goalies on all 4 teams, outside of maybe Edmonton and Stuart Skinner. I wouldn't call him elite, but Shesterkin, elite, uh, Ottinger, elite, and
Bob
then
is playing elite.
Bob is playing elite. So, yeah, I mean, it's kind of defined the odds because I feel like previously, like the higher paid goalies don't usually get to the Stanley Cup playoffs, or not that they don't get to the Stanley Cup playoffs, but they don't usually win the Stanley Cup. You look at Carey Price, you look at Lundqvist, you look at those kind of goalies. Obviously, quick one, but you get the point. I would say it would be Saros for me, and I know it would be a lot to give up, but the risk reward factor, I think, is there. And also, if Nashville is better than you, who cares? They're in another division. Um, Also, he's 29 years old. I mean, he was on a pretty bad Nashville team. I know they
Yeah.
made the playoffs, but they were kind of a bad team. Obviously, their future is really bright with all the first round picks that they have, and Askarov coming up at some point. But I feel like if you're the Red Wings and you want a goalie for a 1A, 1B situation, you gotta swing big. So it's either Saros or it's Ullmark. I don't love the idea of trading with Boston, but I guess it just depends on what you would have to give up. The other question is, would the goalie hug come to Detroit? Question
Oh
mark?
man.
How mad would Boston fans be if that happened?
Alex Lyon does seem like a goalie who would hug someone.
He does. He does. So that would be quite interesting if they did something like that. But um Allmark, the one thing about Allmark, and just hear me out just for a moment. He had a not a down year this past year, but he didn't have a Vesna caliber year this year. And obviously Jeremy Swayman had something to do with that. But if you look at the trajectory, it seems like it was at its peak last year and now it's coming back down. He was never really an elite goalie with the Sabres. He's had a couple of decent years with the Bruins. Then he had the really good year last year, and then this year was like, okay, it was good for a 1A, 1B
Dude, a
situation, but
915 save percentage in 40 games played is a really good season.
it's good, but I'm just saying it's not the Vezina caliber season. Obviously didn't play as many games this year either. So I don't know. I mean, I guess you're kind of splitting hairs with Saros and Allmark. Um, Saros has been really good for the last like 4 or 5 years, where Allmark has kind of went this way, then came this way, and then went way up here, and then came down just slightly. So you're kind of splitting hairs there. I guess it depends on what you'd have to give up. If both of those guys are gone, then obviously Jacob Markstrom is kind of a no brainer. But
I think that Saros would cost you the most. The
you think
Preds
so?
don't have to trade him. I mean, yeah, they have Askarov coming up, and he just killed it with Milwaukee, beat the Griffins with Milwaukee in the playoffs. And I mean, they're gonna bring him in, and if your two goalies tandem is Saros and Askarov, I mean that's great. That's fantastic. And Askarov is still cheap, so you could give Saros a 5-year contract at 6 million, and you'd still be set there. They don't have to trade him. I think that's the big thing. The Bruins are gonna not have a lot of wiggle room to move contracts around, and they really can't keep both Allmark and Swayman, and they don't want to walk Allmark to free agency, I don't think. And but if you look at it, Sarah Valley says that to keep an eye on the Kings and the Sens around Linus Ullmark and what they might do there. So I think the easiest to obtain is Markstrom. The most expensive is going to be Saros, and then your runner up is going to be Ullmark. But any three of them, like you said, I think is going to improve the locker room situation. You would have to move a goalie out, and I don't know if you try and move a Huso for peanuts because you don't know what he's going to come back as after the injury that he had and wasn't playing well before the injury. But you're going to have to move a goalie out in order to bring one in. But the goalie room definitely has to be addressed, and those are the
Do you
three
agree that they
big
can't come
options.
back with the same goalie room that they had last year? I don't think that they can.
I don't think they can either. You need at least one more reliable goalie. That's what you need. So if they want to run three back, then I would run Lyon, new goalie addition, and I guess maybe Reimer, your third goalie. You sign him for another year, super duper cheap as a third, and maybe he plays 5 games, 6 games, maybe. But I don't think you can't run back the exact same room. I don't think. I would just be afraid of Huso coming back and laying an egg, and then you're falling further down in the standings than where you finished this season.
Yeah, I don't love the idea of 3 goalies. I think 2 goalies is enough. If you were to trade for one of these guys and one of Huso, I'm sorry, oh my god, Lyon or one of these guys were to go down, you could just bring up Costa and that would fill the role. I feel like because obviously Trey Augustine we think is going back to Michigan State for 1 or 2 more years, so he wouldn't be an option at this point in time. So that's kind of where I'm at with the goaltending. Is there anybody on the open market that is going to be a free agent?
Yeah, if you were looking at goalies that are on the open market, my choice right now would be Laurent Brossoit. He is 31 years old. Played 23 games this season for the Winnipeg Jets with a 2.0 goals against and a 927 save percentage. So he would be my choice if you were to go on the open market. But you're looking at Matt Murray, absolutely not. Carter Hart, who might not ever see the NHL again. Samsonov, who was wishy washy all season. Chris Drieger, Jeremy Swayman is a free agent, which is who Boston is going to sign.
RFA.
It's who they are going to sign to a huge deal. Capo Kakkonen, Kevin Likinen, Casey DeSmith, Eric Comrie, Nedeljkovic, Reimer, Ranta, Copley, Stolars, Wedgwood, Talbot. So I think that if I had to pick from this list, I might go Casey DeSmith or Laurent Brossoit. Brossoit would be my main choice. He played out of his mind in Winnipeg this season. So
Yeah, I'd be okay with that. I'd also be okay with Samsonov, honestly. I think there's games where Samsonov looks really good. I think you swing a little bit higher if you can do that trade wise. But if all you get is the Smith or you get Ranta or you get Samsonov, I think pretty much all of those guys, or even Brossoit, I think all of those guys are pretty much the same thing. And at this point, they're probably all backups, if not 1A, 1B kind of situation. So I feel like if you're gonna go that route, uh you're gonna run Lyon into the ground again because I don't think those guys can play as much as some of the aforementioned guys like Ullmark or Markstrom or Saros. So
let's talk about a couple forwards. One of the big names that's out right now is Nikolai Ehlers. He is 28 years old, played for the Winnipeg Jets, 82 games played, 25 goals, 36 assists for 61 points, with 1 year remaining on his contract at a $6 million cap hit. And again, it's a guy that Ehlers is basically saying, trade me. Basically, he's been in trade talks for like the past however many seasons. But if he's out, I think that's a guy that immediately solidifies your top six. He's a dude you plug in on the second line, especially if Patrick Kane is gone. If Patrick Kane is gone and you plug in a 28-year-old Ehlers, I think that's a great fit. You put him. I think you're probably not going to break up the Cat Larkin Raymond top line. I think you learned last season that probably wasn't a smart idea. But if you put him on a second line, and if you get another center, I mean, the big situation is, I would say the perfect situation would be to find a center and bump Compher down to the third line center position and find a good quality second line center. I think Ehlers is a great complement for that second line.
I like the Ehlers idea. Super fast, obviously. Has some consistency issues, has some issues when it comes to postseasons, but the Wings are just trying to get to the postseason at this point. He's requested a trade, right?
hasn't formally requested a trade, I don't believe.
But I know that's been speculated. So, I mean, 1 year left at $6 million. You could probably get Winnipeg to eat some of that. Maybe not, but I guess it depends. I feel like if you were to trade for Ehlers, it would be somewhat of a hockey deal, like maybe 1-for-1. Or I know Winnipeg doesn't have a whole lot of prospects left at this point. They're kind of like, I don't want to say in the twilight at this point of contention, but like
Oh,
I
I think
feel
they're
like
on the way down.
I felt that way prior to this season, but like, this season gave you some hope. I feel like if they could inject some youth into that, I feel like they could extend that window that they have of being at least a contender. I don't know if they're a Stanley Cup contender. I think they're kind of fugazis, as Biz likes to say. But I don't know. I mean, Ehlers would be good. I feel like Winnipeg has kind of needed to shake things up with their crew. And I feel like Ehlers would be a good one. I also feel like Cole Perfetti, if they ever wanted to trade Cole Perfetti, I'd be in on that. Um, yeah, Winnipeg is definitely going to be one of those teams that's going to try to shake things up after getting eliminated in the first round, right, by Colorado. So
Yeah, it was not pretty. What about number
yeah,
4
so
on Sarah Valley's board, Martin Necas from the Carolina Hurricanes? 25 years old, 77 games played, 24 goals, 29 assists, 53 points. He is a pending RFA. He is due for $3.5 million qualifying offer. And he has apparently, according to Sarah Valley, made it clear to the Canes that he's looking for more opportunity, which Sarah Valley says is difficult to find with Seth Jarvis and Andrei Svechnikov ahead of you on the depth chart. Everyone wants him, apparently. Why wouldn't you? And he's going to get a pretty big raise in pay. So I think that again, this is a guy, he's 25, so he perfectly fits your window. He would absolutely slot right in on your second line, and that would give him the opportunity he needs. Now, are you going to have to send a lot out to get him? Yes. That is a situation where you're going to have a hefty trade. There are people that are like, well, if you want Netchas, just send them like Berggren and a third round pick. That's
no,
not
it's
going
going
to
to cost
do it.
more than that.
You're replacing Netchas with like a discount Netchas in Jonathan Berggren, and they're gonna want a first. They're going because he's still 25. You control him. You can extend him for 8 years if you wanted to.
Could you offer sheet?
GMs hate the offer sheet, Tyler. They hate it.
I don't understand why. They think it's disrespectful. It's part of the rule. If you don't like it, then take it out of the rule and take the offer sheet off the table. I don't understand what the fuck the deal is with it. Like, if you don't like it that much, then take it out once the CBA comes up again. Like,
Well,
I just don't. Why have it if you're not going to utilize it? And Carolina's utilized it a couple times, right? They got just Barry Kotkaniemi. It hasn't really worked out for them, but Montreal tried to offer sheet Sebastian Aho a couple of years ago. So like it does happen, but then the player actually transferring and moving to another team almost certainly never happens. So, but with Carolina in kind of a cap crunch,
they're not though. They've got $26.5 million free.
no, but I think they want to keep Jake Gensel. And so if they're going to do that, are they going to be able to do that and re-sign Brett Pesce and re-sign?
So Max Comtois, Jack Drury, Seth Jarvis, Martin Nichas, Jake Gensel, Jordan Martinook, Stefan Nosen, Teuvo Teravainen, Dylan Coughlin, Jalen Chatfield, Anthony D'Angelo, Brett Pesce, Brady Shea are all your
Oof.
free agents and unrestricted and restricted free agents. So they have a lot of guys they have to sign, and they have $26.5 million to do it. But again, if you want to keep Gensel, that's a lot of money. You want to keep Brett Pesce, that's money. Brett Pesce's a guy I would love to pick up. They'll let Tony D'Angelo walk. Jalen Chatfield. Jalen Chatfield is 28 years old. Do they re-sign him or let him walk? Brady Shea. You think they'd want to keep Brady Shea around? So they have a lot. Carolina, after coming out of the playoffs with a bunch of question marks, has a lot of decisions to make this offseason. And again, maybe you put I don't know, a $5 million offer sheet out on Netchas. But then again, could
That's
you
gonna get
maybe
matched.
could you maybe get him in a trade for less than what the $5 million offer sheet would get you?
Depends on what you're willing to give up, you know? I mean, if you're willing to give up first round picks or a first round pick and maybe a Bergeron, maybe one of the young defensemen, then I think you could probably have the conversation.
Well, a $5 million offer sheet, if they accepted it, if they said, yes, you can have him for five, we're not going to match it, you would have to give them a first round pick and a third round pick for that offer sheet. If you anything above 2.145 million, you have to give a second round pick at least. So a first round pick starts at 4.290126 is where you have to start giving a first. So maybe if you said 4.290125, that is what we're going to offer, and they say, okay, we'll let him go because we need that money for other players, then all you have to give them is a second. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think they
No, I
match
feel
that.
like if you're gonna shoot for that, you're gonna have to shoot higher. You're gonna have to shoot in the 6 range or 6.5, maybe 7.
Yeah, and at that point, absolutely not, because at 6.5, you have to give them a first, a second, and a third.
Yeah, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. And
So
Steve
good try.
Eisenman's not gonna do that either. But I'll just say one thing on the Necas train here. I feel like there's been a lot of smoke with this over the last couple of years that Necas could be in the Red Wing uniform. Um, Don Waddell is now gone from Carolina, so they might operate differently. A lot of the times when general managers come in, they like to make their own decisions and put their own stamp on the team. So is it a situation where the new general manager is going to want to make some moves and shake up the core? They're a team that could really use a shakeup of the core, in my opinion. I think that group has run its course. The Teravainens, the
They
Necas,
could
the
use a
Ahos.
healthy Svechnikov.
But again, it kind of seems to always happen to them. But I feel like replacing 188 and Patrick Kane with another 88 and Marty Necas would be an upgrade. I hate to say that because I know Patrick Kane's a legend, and um, will go down as one of the better American-born players of all time, if not the best American-born player of all time. But he is what, 36, about to be 37. Like, Patrick Kane's not getting any younger, and the goal isn't to put the coolest team on the ice. The goal is to win, and if the goal is to win, you look at Marty Necas. He seems to get better every year. And if you watch him out there, he skates like the wind. He's got really good hands and a good shot. So that's the kind of player you want. That's the kind of player that every other team in the NHL wants. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with him.
And everyone in the comments on YouTube, feel free to yell at me about how we could have had him instead of Michael Rasmussen, because I know that's coming. As soon as people listen to us start talking about Necas, they're going to start typing their comment in the YouTube comment section, and they're going to enter. And then they're going to hear me tell them to type their comment into the YouTube comment section, because I know that is what you are going to talk about. And again, Ken Holland's not here anymore, so we can stop doing that. I want to talk about the only defenseman. Darnell Nurse was mentioned, and I'm okay. But at number 3 on Sarah Valley's list is Jakob Chychrun, Ottawa Senators, age 26. In 82 games played, 14 goals, 27 assists for 41 points. Has 1 year remaining at $4.6 million. I mean, do you want to trade with the Sens again? Probably not. Does his injury still scare me? I think it will forever, having those knees that have gone bad. I mean, it's the same thing really with Robbie Fabry, as you wince every time he gets on the ice. And I think the same thing would happen with Chychrun, though Fabry did have a healthy season this season. I think that if you look at it, he's been cast off by Ottawa fans as a DeBrincat. They're basically calling him DeBrincat 2.0. Look, we got him, and then he was garbage, so anyone can have him for nothing. And again, I mean, you got DeBrincat for a good deal, and DeBrincat's a great player. You could get Chychrun, I think, for a decent deal, and he would replace Ghost. That would be your Shayne Gostisbehere replacement, would be Chychrun. But again, is that just more of the same, or is that actually an upgrade at this point? I guess is the question. Is it Ghost 2.0, Or do you see far more defensive upside in Chychrun than you saw in Ghost? I mean, there's going to be defensive upside because Ghost was literally like power play and get off the ice, or offensive zone and get off the ice, as to where Chychrun is more responsible defensively. And I'll pull the J Fresh card in a minute. But what are your thoughts on Chychrun? I mean, I don't want to give up a ton to get him, but again, he's a guy that improves. But I'd rather have someone like a Brett Pesci.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what you'd have to give up. I guess that the conversation starts with that with any of these players, because obviously you would want Jakob Chychrun on your hockey team as long as he's healthy. Um, and same with Ehlers, same with Necas, same with the other guys that we're going to talk about here. Um, so it depends on what you'd have to give up, really. I mean, Chychrun is one of those players that when he's healthy, he's a pretty good player. Um, it seems like, and I don't want to say anything bad about a player, but you almost feel bad for him, like as a guy. Like he's he's really good when he's out there. Is this guy at some point going to have to retire early because of all the injuries? Like I just remember with the Coyotes as a 21-year-old or whatever he was, coming to the NHL and playing really well on a bad Coyotes team, and he was good there forever. Kind of like Ekman Larson was good there forever. And now Ekman Larson obviously playing really good with Florida, but on the third pair at this point because he wasted his career in that shithole that is Arizona, as did Chychrun, and now he's wasting it in that shithole that is Ottawa. Um, I would be fine with making the trade. I don't know if Ottawa wants to trade with you again, to be frank. But Steve Staios is the new general manager of the Ottawa Senators, and maybe it's a situation where he wants to put a stamp on the team and make a move and get rid of a player that is making just over $4.5 million. So I think it would be a good move. Obviously, it's an upgrade on Gostisbehere, but there are some free agents out there like Brett Pesci, even Brady Shea, like guys like that that are an upgrade on Ghost too. So like I don't know.
Yeah, so if you look at him against Shayne Gostisbehere had an EV offensive WAR of 58% and a defense WAR of 21. And if you look at Chychrun, he had an offensive WAR of 57 and a defensive WAR of 32. So there's an upgrade there, though not a huge upgrade. Chychrun is going to be more defensively responsible with just like 1 percentage point lower in offense. What Sarah Valley says is that Chychrun is going to be due a big raise, and that the Sens would probably prefer to move Thomas Chabot in his $8 million contract, but it would be easier to move Chychrun because not many teams can take on the $8 million. Wanting to move Chabot is an interesting choice, I think. Thomas Chabot had a 95% offensive WAR and a 47% defensive WAR, so he is both a better defenseman, offensive and defensive defenseman than Chychrun is. But that contract is big, and Ottawa has not a lot of money. But to go to Chychrun's health, like you said, like are worried about injuries, yeah. But again, he played 82 games this season. So like, am I still worried about those injuries? Yeah, because they're at any point could come back to bite him, but they didn't last season. And he played at a half a point per game for a defenseman who is, I mean, 26 years old. So like right at that UFA age. And that's young. And if he says the knees are good and he can still keep playing 82 game seasons or 70 game seasons or whatever, I think it's a move you make simply because, again, that's cup contention window age. And if
Yeah.
he becomes your second line left defenseman or your second pair left defenseman, or you play him up top with Mo, and then your second pair is Edvinsson and eventually Sandin Palika, I mean, that's what you're kind of trying to grow toward.
Yeah, the only thing that I worry about, and I don't know that Jakob Chychrun's at fault for the Senators not being as good. Like you feel like, and I could be wrong about this. Like there obviously is probably situations that players have traded for players from Arizona and they've had success. But I feel like the players that get traded from Arizona don't have a lot of success elsewhere. Like, I'm not saying Chychrun wasn't a good defenseman, or wouldn't be a good defenseman with the Wings, but, like, it feels like players that leave Arizona get worse, not better.
Great. I will take Clayton Keller. And that is hopefully he doesn't get worse. They can give him just tell Utah, like, hey guys, here's what we're gonna trade for him because every player that leaves your team is just awful everywhere they go. So we're not gonna give you very much, but we would like one Clayton Keller, please.
Yeah, I don't know that I'm against trading for Chychrun. I guess it just depends on what you'd have to give up. What do you think you would have to give up
To Ottawa,
in
for
division?
in division, but I'm not sure they take that much into account. You're probably going to have to give them a high end prospect, but they're probably going to want forward prospects since they've invested pretty heavily in defense. That again, that might just be a hard trade to pull off because you need your forward prospects. They're not going to take your cast off, so you're not going to be able to be like, oh, we'll give you a third and Robbie Fabry for Chychrun. I don't think that's something that they're going to go for. So there might not even be a partner there in order to get a Chychrun.
Yeah, you might be right. I don't know. It'll be interesting. We'll see what happens. Did we touch on Marner?
No, but I don't think it's worth touching on Marner because one, it's not going to happen, and two, I think people would riot.
Oh, I think there is a chance that would happen.
I don't. I mean, I keep joking saying you send them Fabry and Huso and you don't make them retain anything. You just take 100% of Marner's contract
Just
and
give
just
him Johnny Burgers and one of the young defensemen.
that's not going to work though. The Red Wings cannot take on a $10 million contract without getting rid of salary. So you would have to send out like a Fabry. You would have to say take Fabry, and then you'd still have to shed salary. So the money is what makes it not work. And Toronto's not going to retain anything because they need a pretty serious overhaul in order to actually make things work. And though people might say, yes, please send Mitch Marner here, but there's going to be a really large sect of the people that are going to say, I don't want Marner because, again, like you said, this team is trying to be tougher to play against, and Marner is not that.
Yeah, I think that the problem is if you look at Mitch Marner, obviously he's a good hockey player, but he's a good hockey player on the perimeter. If he could have a coach, maybe a coach like Derek Lalonde would be able to get through to him and say, "Hey, Mitch, you got to go to the dirty areas." I'm not saying you have to be a bruiser in the corner, but one of the best players of all time, and I know we're comparing defenseman and forward at this point, but one of the best players of all time, Nick Lidstrom, was never overly physical. He was just good at getting the puck. He was good at playing the puck. He was good at stick lifting, good at poke checking, good at positioning. Why can't Mitch Marner be better at just winning puck battles? It doesn't have to be physical. Like, I know he's not physically a big guy. He can't change that. He really can't change that other than maybe going to the weight room and getting stronger. Um, I feel like a lot of people blame Mitch Marner for the Leaf struggles, and probably rightfully so in some cases. But I think that organization just needs a shakeup, as kind of I talked about with Winnipeg. But they're even worse because you trade Marner, okay, you got $10 million off the books. If someone is willing to take that, would like I feel like Nashville and Toronto are a match made in heaven. Saros
Oh,
and maybe one other guy to Toronto for Mitch Marner, no salary retained. Boom. There it is. Mitch Marner goes to a lesser hockey market. Not saying people in Nashville don't care about hockey, they certainly do. And then UC Saros helps their goaltending situation in Toronto. And another, I don't know exactly right off the top of my head who else would have to go out to Toronto, but I feel like that's the kind of trade that it would take to get Mitch Marner. I don't think the Wings really have that unless you want to give up first round picks, which I don't
I
want to do
don't.
that with the Toronto Maple Leafs or anyone in our division for that matter.
I hate that.
So,
All right, Tyler,
yep.
that's where we're gonna end it tonight. Like, give me your quick final thoughts, and then we'll sign off.
Yeah, final thoughts are is I'm gonna get off here and go watch the rest the Stars Oilers game. It's 2-1 in the I think it's in the second period right now. Or is it in the first? Yeah, it's in the first right now. So looking forward to the off season. I know we have some stuff planned here. Not gonna give anything away. Wink wink, nudge nudge. Just looking forward to seeing what happens after the playoffs are over. Obviously, don't want to rush that too much, but with the Griffins being out and the Walleye also being out, um, it's all eyes on next season. If you're a Red Wings fan, it's all eyes on the off season and seeing what Steve Yzerman can do, what magic he can do to make this team better and get them 1 point better to make the playoffs. Obviously, it might take a little bit more than that this coming season to make the playoffs, but that's the point is you're trending upward, and I feel like they've continued to do that. They've been better under Steve Yzerman every single year. So let's see if they can't take that next step to get to to get to the playoffs. And even if you lose in 5 games, getting playoff experience for guys like Dylan Larkin and the younger guys on this team, and even yeah, I should say Dylan Larkin obviously has played in the playoffs in his first rookie year, but getting the Siders and the Edvinssons and the DeBrincats. Obviously, DeBrincat did play with Chicago, but you get the point. The younger guys, the Raymonds to the playoffs, will pay huge dividends down the road because even if they lose in 5 games, the next season they'll be like, well, okay, we've gotten a taste of it. We understand how hard it is because it is harder. You see the switch flip. Um, but yeah, I'm looking forward to that, and you can follow me on Twitter at SealDog91.
Yeah, you can follow me online at Bringing the Wing. Follow the Grindline Podcast online at Grindline Pod. We'd like to give a shout out to the Hockey Podcast Network for hosting our show and spreading it around to everyone. We also give a shout out to Vintage Detroit, which is the only place you should get your Detroit jerseys from and worked at, where we also have our exclusive t-shirt collection. If you go to Vintage Detroit and click on Keep It Local, you will find the Grindline Podcast, and our shirts are up there. I have a couple designs I need to submit in the next couple days over to them to see what they think. There's going to be more coming from Vintage Detroit with us. Other than that, you can sub to us on YouTube, turn on notifications. We get notified every time we go live, and click the like button. It pushes us up, helps the algorithm out, and gets our videos around to more Red Wings fans like yourself. But that is going to do it for us tonight. So for Tyler, I am Greg. You stay classy, Hockeytown.